In 1885, a man stood on the gallows waiting to be executed. The lever was pulled, but nothing happened. They tried again. Still nothing. A third attempt failed too. This is the true story of the man they couldn't hang. The crime and trial. John Lee was a 19-year-old footman working at the Glen, a villa in Babbacombe, Devon. His employer was Emma Keese, a wealthy, elderly woman who had once been kind to him. But their relationship had soured. On the morning of November 15, 1884, Miss Keese was found dead. Her skull had been fractured, her throat had been cut, and her body had been set on fire. John Lee was arrested. The evidence was circumstantial. An oil can, a knife, his presence in the house. No confession, no witnesses. But the jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to death by hanging. Lee maintained his innocence, but on February 23, 1885, he was led to the gallows at Exeter Prison. Execution Day. The night before, the executioner, a man named James Barry, tested the trapdoor mechanism multiple times. It worked perfectly. The trap opened smoothly. The mechanism was sound. The morning arrived cold and gray. Inside the prison, a small crowd of officials gathered. Hangings were no longer public spectacles, but witnesses were required. The prison governor, the chaplain, surgeons, reporters. John Lee was brought from his cell. He was pale but composed. The chaplain walked beside him, reading prayers. Lee's arms were pinned behind his back. He climbed the 13 steps to the scaffold. Barry placed the noose around his neck and tightened it. He pulled the white hood over Lee's face. Everything was ready. Barry stepped back and pulled the lever. Nothing happened. 3 failed attempts. The trapdoor, which had opened flawlessly during every test, refused to drop. Barry pulled the lever again. The bolts withdrew. But the doors stayed shut, jammed tight, as if sealed. Lee stood motionless on the trap, the noose around his neck, blind beneath the hood. Seconds stretched into minutes. The officials were stunned. Barry removed the noose and the hood. Lee was let off the trap. Barry and the prison staff examined the mechanism. They found no obstruction, no fault. They tested it without Lee standing on it. It opened instantly. Lee was brought back, the noose replaced, the hood pulled down again. Barry pulled the lever. Nothing. Again the trapdoor held firm. Again, Lee stood waiting to fall. And didn't. By now the witnesses were uneasy. Some murmured about divine intervention. Barry was sweating. He removed Lee from the trap a second time. They tested it again. It worked. They brought Lee back a third time, positioned him, secured the noose. Barry pulled the lever with force. The trap didn't open. The prison governor stopped the execution. Sentence commuted. John Lee was taken back to his cell, alive. News of the failed execution spread quickly. The story appeared in newspapers across Britain. People debated what it meant. Some saw it as proof of Lee's innocence. Others called it mechanical failure. A few whispered about fate. The Home Secretary reviewed the case. Executing a man after 3 failed attempts seemed barbaric, even by Victorian standards. 2 weeks later, Lee's death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He would not hang, but he would not be free. Lee was transferred to Portland Prison where he worked in the quarries. He was a model prisoner, quiet, obedient. He never stopped insisting he was innocent. Aftermath. In 1907, after 22 years behind bars, John Lee was released. He was 41 years old. The world had changed. He tried to start over, married, had children, worked odd jobs, but he was forever known as the man they couldn't hang. He gave interviews, sold his story. Some versions contradicted each other. In his later years, he reportedly moved to America, though records are unclear. He may have died in Milwaukee in 1945. But the question remains, why didn't the trapdoor open? Official reports blamed damp weather warping the wood. Barry, the executioner, believed the floor had sagged under Lee's weight. Skeptics pointed out the mechanism worked before and after, just not with Lee on it. Was it a fault in the wood, a flaw in the design, or something no one could explain? John Lee walked free from a fate that should have been certain. Whether by luck, circumstance, or something beyond understanding, the gallows refused to take him, and history never gave a final answer.